All right, good afternoon, everybody. Again, appreciate you guys coming up for this session. The idea here is we're going to talk about, secure use of AI in military operations and stuff. So we only got about 20 minutes. We had a huge agenda, so we're going to try to streamline that down. In the end, the focus here, what we're going to try to do is kind of outline governance, how the military and specifically is seeing the governance of using AI in military operations, talk about some guardrails, and then talk about even some operational implementations of those kind of guardrails to kind of measure that success. As the first slide said, my name is Patrick Perry. I work for a company called Zscaler. We've been doing cybersecurity for a long time. AI is the new hottest buzzword. So we're going to jump right into it. And from that point, anybody here ever seen the movie Zoolander? It's one of my favorite movies. When I think of AI, I think of this scene in AI. It's just so hot right now. Everybody wants to talk about AI. There's nothing that nobody is doing with anything that doesn't have AI involved in it. So when we talk about that, or even kind of think about that, let's talk about where it kind of came from recently. Obviously, AI has been around a long time, but the explosion of something like ChatGPT and specifically LLMs has kind of changed our world, and it was just a few years ago. And in that few years ago, it's actually exploded into an ecosystem of thousands and thousands of AI-enabled apps. And that's at the public side of the world. Obviously, every organization is even doing their own private side application when it comes to using AIs to integrate it into their environment. But so when we do like a quick audit of this environment on the sense of what is AI being used for, we kind of scoped out the internet. We're a pretty big company. We're in the middle of a lot of transactions. So we got some pretty good analytics we can look at, and you'll see roughly 43% or so is just ChatGPT. It kind of scales off from there. But the big takeaway from a slide like this is people are trying to use and integrate AI into being more productive in what they do. And some people are military, obviously, in here because they're in uniform. Some other people have probably been around or within the military for some time. And the hardest thing you can do is force multiply. How do we get more out of people faster to conduct operations? The interesting thing that we also discovered is the most blocked AI apps in the world are the same ones. So how does that work? How can you have the most used apps in the world be also the most blocked? And the obvious answer is the people blocking it are because they've already had a cybersecurity problem. The people not blocking it are either accepting that they have problems and they don't want to do anything about it, or they're injecting cybersecurity somehow into the use of AI. As a quick little example of, again, where AI can really take an organization down the wrong road, not only once, not twice, but 3 times. A pretty big company out there, you probably heard of them, called Samsung. They had 3 incidents in a pretty small amount of time. None of it was malicious. It was all accidental. It was all what they believed was just good operational use of AI models to do things like optimize their code base or even optimize their notes that they were taking in a meeting. And all 3 of them turned into massive amounts of intellectual property data loss that really compromised the organization in different ways. So just when you think about that, and then you think about those kind of problems, just at the data loss part of it, and how that can impact the government. This is just an example of recent governance being put out. The AI Action Plan is, I think, one of the most recent ones here in 2025. But it didn't start there. In 2020, we had the AI and Government Act of 2020. Then we had another AI Act in 2022. We had OMBM 2521 earlier in 25, and then there's so many other ones. And the real thing that I want to kind of stomp home here is the government realized within this just few years, AI is going to be everywhere. It's going to be part of our lives, whether you like it or not. You better figure out how to use it in a way where we don't compromise our mission at that time. This is a lot of words, so I apologize, but I felt I kind of needed to do it. All the governance out there is emphasizing a lot of these things. And we're not going to kind of beat up all this kind of stuff, but if you just read the kind of top few ones, you'll see where the government is really concerned of how AI is going to get integrated within our operations. Namely, what the military does. How do we use AI to do what we do in the military better, faster, and one of my favorite words right there, explainable. It's very concerning to some people how AI may talk, and therefore how you understand where its reasoning was and where you're kind of going with it. And then obviously you can't talk AI in the military without talking ethics. So this is just an example of the basic framework that the U.S. military is really trying to kind of get after. And the idea here is that if we know where it works and we know where our challenges are, we can kind of look and align these principles and how we use it. But what we're still only talking about right here is how we use, integrate, and kind of give overarching guidance and governance of AI. We haven't talked about it. How are we actually going to inject something like cybersecurity into such a complex kind of organism, ecosystem that we have per se. So what we're going to do next, we're going to kind of shift into the talking about guardrails. How can we get into the middle of how AI works and start injecting, basic cybersecurity principles? I'm a big fan of the old term, the CIA triad of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So how do we just inject these kind of concepts into the way that we use AI? And one of the things that I want to kind of also point out is AI really also has two main use cases. And these use cases are what we could kind of consider public, how to use a public model or an AI model or an AI capability that's not yours. So again, therefore your data has a lot of concerns of where it could go, that kind of stuff. And then private, obviously we're doing a lot of things with private. People are taking models, they're bringing it in-house, they're training it on their own stuff, and then they're doing stuff with it. So we're going to kind of differentiate those two in a little bit of way, because obviously just like normal cybersecurity, they change your attack surface and your threat vectors. So we can't look at them as one is the same. You may not need to apply the same kind of security for a privately owned, because your DLP concern or your data loss concern may not be at the same level as a public or an external. And I don't want to use the term public overly or too much, because a lot of people then lean to something that's out there on the internet, it's publicly facing and that kind of stuff. But in the military, it could be, again, a joint organization. It could be a coalition organization. It could be any type of partner. That would be considered a public kind of tool. So just to kind of level set the interchangeability of these words. But so right here, what we really kind of want to focus in on is there's three main challenges with AI. And if everybody's probably in here used AI quite a bit. Companies kind of see you need to understand and be able to approach security AI very, very similar to normal traditional IT. So visibility, you have to know what people are doing before you can figure out what kind of security you're going to do them. The little example right there, I'll give you a little bit of time to kind of read it. This is just an example of where, again, having visibility of what somebody's trying to do, like so say, send a prompt to a big tool model, just that visibility of the prompt itself and what it was returned with is incredibly valuable to the cybersecurity world. Along with that is how do we control access? ICAM is probably the most, overstated term in cybersecurity these days. How do we control access, not only the people that we do administer and trust per se, but how do we control access with the ones that we don't know or don't trust? So same kind of concept. Maybe not everybody should have access to the model, and maybe not everybody should be able to use the model in the exact same way. So how do we control that? Again, a lot of tools right now may not have that level of granularity baked into it, so how do we do it on top of it? And then finally, the data loss, what we were talking about. And in the end, I kind of package this up as, again, where the real threat and attack surface is. What happens if data, very important data to your organization ends up inside of a model that you never wanted it to be in. This could be because of, some kind of PII restraint or that kind of stuff, or it could be, again, you're working with a partner nation or partner organization, and you don't want them to know certain aspects of, the data that you're using to make your decisions. When we start kind of shifting just from that and okay, so what if we do build a private capability? One of the biggest things commanders love these days are dashboards. How can I make sense of data faster to make a decision? It all comes down to that. But AI is kind of changing this world, because in the old world of these dashboards, you had data sources, you had ways that you turned the data into a visual aid, and then the decision maker looked at that data in a kind of static way and moved on. But with AI tools, it's a whole new world, especially when you think about, again, these LLMs. Now the commander or anybody anywhere in the decision process of a military operation can get in front of some kind of interface, some kind of, whether it's a bot, whether it's an agent or something, and they can actually start trying to figure out how they want to visualize and use data live. And they can constantly change it. So if one visual representation or one method of bringing data together doesn't work, they can change it on the fly right away. That sounds amazing, incredibly impactful and a lot of decision space for these people with it in their hands. The problem is it's, kind of like everything else. Anything that works really good usually has a lot of security concerns in it, unfortunately. So another example, I don't know if anybody's heard about this one. People were able to trick, through prompt injections. They were able to trick the model into rethinking how it had to approach contract negotiations, and basically was able to get it to sign a contract or agree to a contract for selling a brand new car for $1. And in the end, because the model had its guardrails, you can slowly inject different ways for it to think and approach it to where it could work outside those guardrails. This is just an unfortunate thing. There's lots of examples, stuff like this. This is, I think, one of the funnier ones because the guy even used no takesy backsies in it just to kind of prove how much you can manipulate the model and how it interfaced back with you. So in the end, top threats, there's a lot of top threats when it comes to AI applications. These are kind of the categories that you see, and some of it's quite a bit different, unfortunately, with other aspects of your information domain. You could go all day into the whole no delete aspect of an AI model. Again, once you put it into the model, it's there forever. You cannot get it out. It's there. It's going to think through it. And again, if that was sensitive, it will always have that. This is where, again, a lot of companies are really concerned, obviously. But that prompt injection and data poisoning, just like that last example, that kind of stuff. Access control, we've already talked about it. And then this, everybody loves the idea or the concept of one common data layer, bring all data into one big pool or lake or swamp, whatever you want to call it, and then throw capabilities at it to make sense of it faster than what humans can do. But unfortunately, if you put all your eggs in one basket, everybody knows the tale. It can go really bad just as fast. It could go really good. But what I do want to really emphasize is this concept of agentic capabilities and the risks associated with those. But there's also a lot of perks when it comes to the military. If you've ever deployed, you've ever worked in small, areas, even outside the military, places like Department of State like that, boots on ground of the amount of people is a very politically sensitive topic. This is why, again, the military is always really pushing towards how do we get force multiplication out of other aspects, our tools and that kind of stuff. And the agentic approach to how AI is being used is really the kind of game changer here. When you think about a small team of 3 people, because they're mandated to keep their team that small, goes into an area of operation, but they can spin up agentic, specialized agents there to help them. They turned a team of 3 into a team of 50. And you think of that much power into the military when you work in small teams, this is kind of one of those game changers when we really start thinking about it. Unfortunately, it's also very concerning. So, again, 4 main categories of security when it comes to AI. I'm a big zero trust person. I talk about it all the time, and I like to boil down all cybersecurity risks down to 3 buckets, and that is access control, threat defense, and analytics. I don't think anything is really different from this. And the reason why I really want to kind of state the obvious per se is to protect or secure your AI doesn't mean you need a new monolithic cybersecurity capability. If you work through security properly and you invest properly in how you do cybersecurity within your environment, you kind of start coming to the realization that what we, like everything else, where can we create or where can we work this platform play where, again, we now just change features in how interactions with the data within the cybersecurity environment that you already kind of use. So I'll take a couple of quick seconds or a few minutes, because that's all I already have, and talk about, our way to do it, which again, this is, conceptual and operationally already being employed inside the world, and see if it kind of relates with you. Again, the biggest goal here was to kind of spew a lot of ideas and thought-provoking kind of comments out there. And again, if you want to talk afterwards, because 20 minutes is just not enough to really go into this, we can talk definitely right after this. So we'll talk about a couple of top use cases that we're seeing out there and that people are bringing to us. Obviously, secure public gen AI. The threat surface, the attack surface, and that kind of stuff is self-evident. I talked about that a whole bunch. Obviously, probably also in the government, especially, and a lot in the military too, is this use of Copilot. Microsoft Copilot is an incredibly fast and expanding capability that right out the box is probably going to have almost unlimited reach into some of your data that's kind of already being injected within that environment. And then finally, that secure enterprise use of private AI, which obviously in the military we're constantly using AI in different kind of application, whether it be optimize the kill chain, whether it be optimize logistical resourcing, all those kind of things. People have been building AI tools quite fast against all these things. And anybody that's worked with Copilot knows Copilot, again, it kind of sits right there behind all your data in Microsoft. Anything that is kind of in there, it kind of leverages some of the access the Enter ID kind of knows, but then it's just kind of there. It's already kind of exposed to it. So how can you inject a capability, kind of like a proxy, in the middle of controlling how much Copilot can have access to and how much your users can either inject into Copilot or get Copilot to go grab. So just kind of think of it like that. How do you make Copilot kind of know, hey, I'm allowed to go look in this source of data, maybe logistics data, but I'm not allowed to go look in finance data when I'm responding to the things that you want to know about. Secure posture management is a concept that's been around for a while, especially with cloud environments and in any other environments in the military, because in the end, capabilities can be very powerful, but if they're not configured very well, they become an attack surface of their own. Pick your security appliance out there in the world, they all have had this problem. People have a good, awesome product, they deploy it, they don't keep it up or they don't configure it quite possibly. Everybody's always heard about, S3 buckets exposed and all this other kind of stuff. Same kind of problem. What about your AI environment? How about those things? To include Copilot, but even if you brought Claude in or something out, are they configured properly out the gate to lower that attack surface? So we're going to spin through this fast. So again, you got to control things, that access control things. Here's a little thing. Here's a little snippet of kind of, again, the way that we approach it. And because we're a cloud kind of service, you see it's very intuitive, very simple to use. The bottom line is because we're already in the middle of all your data transactions and we can get in the middle of your AI transactions, you have granular ABAC basic level control to where you can block, access, or even what we like to refer to as isolate. So think of something like cloud browser isolation and that kind of stuff. You also got to protect it, whether it's data loss or some kind of malware being injected back into the environment. How do I scan and protect the movement of data that shouldn't be moving? So same kind of thing. And then finally, what are my analytics? What are my logs? And the big takeaway, what I want to kind of leave with this kind of stretch of slides is that it's almost doable when you're working with an AI model. It's almost impossible to try to do it across lots of AI models. And if you've worked with AI at all, especially when you start kind of conceptualizing the idea of using these things called like agents, AI is incredibly powerful when you make it very specific. When you give it a very specific role. Just think of a person. I want to train you to do something and do it really freaking good. Really good. That's good. And every model may be better at one specific thing. You may want to use Claude for this. You may want to use, Anthropic for this. Blah 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 blah. The whole point of what I'm saying is the way you're going to be able to manage all three of those things: analytics, control, and threat defense across lots of different platforms, is almost going to be impossible unless you have something in the middle, because you have to have some kind of commonality to approach cybersecurity with it. So. I'm down to just like a minute, so I'm going to fly through this, and I'm just going to kind of hit the high wave tops. The bottom line is, again, you have to stop problems with the prompt going into the model. You have to also stop problems with the response that the model may be giving. Across the bottom, you can see some examples of what you may be concerned with. It may not just be data loss or that kind of stuff. It may be, what if your model is kind of going off the deep rails and it starts spitting out gibberish, or it starts, again, confusing things. You need to have something that kind of tracks that. Same thing with deployment. We're going to shift over to deployment models. Some models, especially in public models, a full proxy approach like this works out really good, very seamless. It's, again, just that secure service edge between you and the model. But other ones, especially when you think about private models, you're going to want to a lot because you're going to bring those things on-prem. You're not going to want to have to do it the same way, and you may even want to be disconnected. You're going to have some kind of API interconnection with them so it can interface it right there in a much more localized things. And then finally, because I'm just going to leave it at this, this is just a quick list of lots of different things to consider when you're trying to secure, again, your interfacing with AI. There's obviously quite a few more. These are some ideas. These are the different directions they have to be that it happens with. And then you start kind of appreciating a little bit more with how much you need to see, control, and defend when it comes to, again, ethical and proper use of AI, especially when you start thinking about what you want to try to do when it comes to a military operation. Not going to click any more slides. I've got a few more. We don't have time. I'm already out of time. I appreciate everybody's time. I wish I had more time to take questions, but if you do want to chat or anything, I'll be right out back. And again, I appreciate it. I got to give time up because I think somebody else is going to set up. So thank you.